Crime is everywhere and constantly on the rise. Quick and easy cases are solved daily, but what about those more sinister and cold cases that remain to be solved? Join Ashley Moreno as she dives into the horror of some of these cases and sheds some light on what is truly behind the realm of darkness. Here is your host, Ashley Moreno.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Realm of Darkness. Before we kind of get started with this show, I do want to put a disclaimer out that tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a couple emotional and very sensitive topics. So I just want to throw that out there. You know, we do appreciate any respect in the comment section. Just be really nice and respectful to the things that are being said tonight because they are very sensitive and emotional. So with that, I'm going to bring on my great friends. They are known for their scientific approach to the paranormal. They're part of the Parafix family and they're great friends of mine. So please help me welcome John Griffin and Katie Peak.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey, Katie, you made it back.
I did.
We lost you for a minute.
Technical difficulties, so I'm on my phone.
That's okay. It happens sometimes. So for anybody who doesn't know, these two wonderful people are from the UINI Research team, and they kind of take more of a scientific approach to the paranormal and a lot of different things. So one of the things that you guys have out there on Paraflix right now is the paranormal puzzle. So what's kind of going on with that?
So paranormal puzzle, it's been kind of evolving, and I know we're going to head into one of the topics in relation to this, but this topic actually had the event actually had an impact on the series itself. So it's in relation to my brother's death, and originally it was going into episodes, and at the end of the episodes we were for what we were calling, we have like saga and phase. At the end of each phase, we were going to have a feature-length film. And because of the events that transpired, it caused Paranormal Puzzle to head in a different direction. And Paranormal Puzzle was starting to head in a direction that it was not meant to head into. It was meant to be about a universal research into the paranormal, including everything, ufology, spiritual activity, the end of the world, you name it, it's there. And it started to head in the direction of making contact with my brother. And so it was kind of like, well, it's not really starting to fit anymore. Like, part of that is a part of the puzzle, but it's getting away from the universal part. So Paranormal Puzzle is still on its way. It's been kind of in a little of a hiatus, but it's going to be going to full-length documentary form as opposed to just the episodes. And we're going to feature a bunch of locations and a bunch of different experiments and the getting back to that route. But we have separated that other part of the story into something else.
Well, and for anybody that wants to look for these series beforehand, they're all on Paraflix. You guys can watch them there. And now talking about this new project, I've been honored to be able to be a part of it and to film with you guys and see the amazing journey that's taken place. I know that there are probably a lot of people watching that really don't know or don't understand why this journey is taking place and why you guys have kind of shifted the focus. Like I said earlier, these are going to be a little bit of sensitive subjects. Would you mind kind of telling everybody why you're doing Path to Communication, what it means for the both of you, and kind of where you see that going?
Certainly. So the Path to Communication is kind of piggybacking off of a current Paranormal Puzzle series called Paranormal Puzzle Path to Communication. But I saw that Path to Communication for Paranormal Puzzle was, again, it was changing Paranormal Puzzle. So I felt with Paranormal Puzzle, it's a very different series, but the Path to Communication, there was meant to be there's supposed to be a lot of emotion behind it, a lot of raw emotion, and the focus of making contact with loved ones and documenting that journey to finally reaching a point where it's not just, just an EVP here and there. It becomes far more advanced than that. So it's a smaller portion of paranormal puzzle in that respect of the paranormal portion of it, but it's the self and the locations and all that. You'll still see the experiments, but there's a different meaning behind them. And I think that's what viewers are really going to see is the emotional side to the paranormal, as opposed to just, here's the location, it's haunted, here's evidence. There's far more to it.
Yeah, and I have to agree, just being there with you guys and seeing the process that's taking place. A lot of teams just go in, they just want evidence, they just want something from a location saying, oh, hey, we caught this. But watching how you guys are kind of taking this in stride and watching the emotion, especially the raw emotion. And later in the show, there's a part where Katie, when we were filming, there was a part where I caught the emotion and I ended up apologizing. So I don't know if you want this on camera, but I couldn't resist. And you guys are going to be hitting so many different aspects. You're going to be hitting the emotional part, the funny part, the serious aspect, the paranormal aspect. And it is something that I've never seen done before. And I'm so excited for both of you and so emotional for both of you as well, because of the situation and kind of what sparked the idea.
I think for me, what sparked the idea was just conversations about how to connect with people. And one of our favorite locations, Wildwood, seems to do that. It seems to connect you with loved ones, connect you with a spiritual healing, an emotional healing, a physical healing in some capacity. And that's what that place brought in life. So in death, I think it's doing the same thing. And I can say a lot of my experiences and first experiences there were bringing family through. And it seemed like even prior to Jeremy's death, we were connecting with family and with loved ones. And it seemed like even after his passing, he was the one then bringing that on. And I felt like, in talking with John, how do we communicate with loved ones and how do we keep their memory alive and how do we keep that journey going when one of us is on one side and the other is on the other? And, we all have very deep connections to loved ones. And I feel like sometimes the further they are from their life to passing, you tend to forget, or you think you're forgetting and you don't want to. So again, Wildwood tends to bring them closer to that veil. And I think this series is really going to show that, again, raw emotion of they're not far. I never felt like I ever had a loved one that was completely gone. I always felt like, okay, I just can't see them, but they're always around me. And I always felt, somebody was here, and somebody, even when I drive, I feel like, all right, come on, we got a full load of people to cart around. And I feel, again, like this series is showing people that even though they're physically not here, you still have that spiritual connection to them. And the more that you speak their name and tell their stories with raw emotion, with pain, with joy, that keeps that energy and that spark alive, and they're never far from you.
And let's talk about Jeremy. He was an incredible investigator, extremely intelligent in life. And after his passing, he seems to be kind of continuing with that legacy. I know that John, you and Jeremy had plans of you wanted to solve the paranormal. And I know it's not really the way that you had planned it, but you now have this contact on the other side who seems to be reaching out and communicating more than anyone I've ever heard of. And with that, do you think that Jeremy being on the other side and you guys connecting with the loss of your brothers, do you think that's what's going to make people really drawn to this new series?
That for sure. Because it's a different approach. Jeremy was Jeremy was, just for reference for everybody, was the chief science officer for our paranormal team, and full on genius. He built computers for fun. It was incredible. And the progress we made with the research was in part because of a bunch of the work and the hypotheses that he had developed alongside with us. And if like consciousness truly exists, and this is the researcher side speaking now, if consciousness truly exists after, we leave the physical realm, so to speak, he could very well be helping from the other side from a research standpoint. Does he have to research and understand how to communicate from the other side? What do they have to do on that side to communicate with us, and what do we have to do from our side to establish that connection? So essentially, you're the path, so to speak. And people have reported being guided by different, whether it be guardian angels and family members and such. And this kind of essentially documents that. My brother has been recorded countless times, photograph, as well as a bunch of audio recordings, where he's directly responding. He's answering questions about research, and then he's also indicated that there's rules on the other side, that he can only give us hints, and there's certain things that he can say yes or no to, but he cannot actually tell us the answers. He can only guide us, and we have to be the ones who decipher it and get there. So there's that aspect, and then there's the emotional aspect of the story. Why did this happen? Why did it end up the way that it did? Because obviously, for his death, it was not an accident, unfortunately.
Well, and with that, I'm glad that you brought that up, because, one of you have a death that was not accidental, and then you have a death that was accidental, and you're bringing both of those emotions together. And with you guys, with it both being your brothers, and I know that there's some people who don't really know the stories. If you're comfortable, would you mind kind of telling just a little bit of the backstory and kind of why you two have bonded over this situation and bringing this to life?
Yeah, absolutely. I can start. I was married before, and I had met my former in-laws when I was 15. And one of the brothers that was my ex-husband's, we all became super close. And I will never, he became that little brother to me, and I will never call him anything other than that, because that's how much all of that family meant to me. Even to this day, they still mean a ton to me. Things happen, families don't work out, but Anson was an incredible soul. He and my nephew were ridiculously close. I remember when I gave birth to my son, he looked at me, my son was hours old, and said, "This is the greatest gift I will ever have." And I went, "Yeah, okay, whatever. Like, you're going to have kids, you're going to grow old. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "I'm not going to live to see 30. And at 20 years old, he got in the vehicle with a friend of his who he thought was okay to drive. They were driving. They were a quarter mile from our parents' house. And the driver was drunk, hit a tree. The car split in half, and my brother was killed instantly. So for us, it was something that destroyed the family. It was something that has not been easy for us to talk about. My son, it was 7 days before my son's second birthday. He has never known his uncle. We have very few photos because this was 2006. So, photos weren't really a thing. Phones weren't really a thing. They were all in their prime. They were flipped. So we all had that Razor phone that didn't have a great camera. So for us, a lot of this had to do with memory. And when you're so traumatized by a death of a 20-year-old child, you don't really talk about it. And it was very hard for my mother-in-law. It was very hard for my father-in-law. It was very hard for the kids, for my ex. And a lot of times we didn't speak his name. I always tried to in our home. Anytime my son asked a question about his uncle, I gave him appropriate age answers. But it's not been until recently that I've really delved into who he was and really have tried to, get friends involved and tell, Nick stories about him. And I am actually very close to this day with a lot of the friends. They see me at the restaurant that I work at. They see me at work. And it's been hard for me to reach out to family because I feel like there's a boundary with that. For me, it's very easy to talk to ghosts and spirits in locations because I don't have an emotional tie to them. Jeremy kind of changed that for me. And 2 years ago, my aunt had passed and he brought her through. And I brought the recording to my mom and put headphones on her, and I said, I just want you to listen to this. And she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, that's my sister. And for me, that was the first time that I made the connection, not only with Jeremy on this side, but on that side of this can happen. And Anson has been a hard one to talk to. I talk to him all the time, just in my mind and in my home, but I've never really asked for him in locations because I'm protective and I don't want anything to happen to family when we're there, because as we know, the paranormal is great, but it can be terrifying at times. And it's only been recently that through dowsing rod sessions, through pendulum work, through EVP work, through audio work, that I've really started to say, like, hey, I need to bring this connection back. And like I said, it's not easy. I will never admit that this is, and I don't know if it's ever going to be, but I'm willing to put the effort in. And I know that the family is willing to put the effort in to see what communication we can make. And my hope is not only through the paranormal, but through drunk driving and through other awarenesses, that we can change lives. And that for me has always been the most important thing since his passing, is being able to work with organizations on drunk driving. We worked with one called Choices 301 that we did talks. There's a place up here called the Beacon of Hope that does, drunk driving, reckless driving, anything having to do with getting the awareness to people that you have to not be distracted in a vehicle. It is no different than a gun. It is no different than a knife. It is no different than anything. You are in a hundreds of thousands of pound vehicle that can kill. And again, it's, if I can change one person, if I can get one person to put down the beer, if I can get one person to make that phone call instead of taking that chance, that's what I'm going to do. And I know that it's helped in certain capacities. Shortly after his passing, I had a couple friends that called me nights out and was like, I need help. I need you to come get me. I've talked to my son about it, and he said, Mom, I'd rather you be mad for 5 minutes at me and not speak to me for 3 days than get that knock on the door again, because we all want to assume what that feels like to have that police officer stand at your door. I don't want anyone to go through it. I don't want, for me, it was my little brother standing at the edge of my bed, just screaming. And his, girlfriend at the time, fiance, wife, now, the mother of my nieces and nephews, standing there, just staring at me blankly as I'm being woken up to hearing his name, hearing the word car accident, and hearing the word dead. That's all I can tell you of a probably 3-minute conversation. And I kept thinking the entire ride to my parents' house going, this isn't real. He's just injured. He's going to be fine. Like, everyone's blowing this out of proportion. And I walked in the back door and there was more family there than I've seen at a family reunion. And then to have to not only get your family's address book and have to make phone call after phone call to family because my mom couldn't do it. She absolutely just handed me the cordless phone and said, can you do this for me? So for me, I don't want someone to go through that. And I was grateful enough that the day Jeremy passed, that John called me so that I could help him. And I will forever be grateful for that phone call. But again, I've been on the receiving end of it. And then I had to watch my best friend go through that. And I don't know what was harder. I don't know if it was harder for me to have to deal with it or try to help someone that I knew exactly what he was going through. Nothing I was going to say. I remember force feeding him. I remember trying to make him laugh. I remember, but it's like, you don't want to talk. You don't want to speak. Your mind's racing and there's nothing you can do. And time doesn't heal. He's been gone 17 years now and nothing feels there's a before and after. I look at a date and I go, oh, my brother was alive then. Or I look at a date and go, no, he was already gone for 3 months, 6 months, 10 years. There's always just that before and after. But for me, I have to speak about it. I have to keep that alive and I have to make people aware of bad decisions, good decisions, and what you think is the right. He thought he was doing the right thing. And unfortunately he didn't. And I can't change it, but maybe someone watching tonight will put down that extra beer. Maybe someone will stay home. Maybe someone will have that hard conversation with their 19-year-old and say, I don't want to do this. You know, my son the other day said to me, Mom, Anson died at 20, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'm going to be 20 in March.
And that's terrifying.
I composed myself until I couldn't. And then I lost it because I didn't think of it that way. But for my son to think of it that way, that was hard for me. So again, my hope is that through all of this, we can change lives for the better. Or if you know what, if somebody out there is watching this and says, you know what, if she can get through it, I can get through it, and chooses a different path, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, once we hear John's story too, it's like I said, this whole thing is just, it's going to be so many different aspects.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's leaves me speechless, to be honest. But John, if you want to go ahead and tell your portion of the story too.
Yeah. So so my brother died from suicide. And actually, the 2-year anniversary of his death is next Friday, July 7th. So July 7th, 2021, that's a date that will always stick with me. And to the point that I wasn't even going to stay at work anymore last year with 1-year anniversary. I told him I refused to be in my office because that's when I got the phone call. I refused to be in the uniform because I was in the uniform at the time of the phone call. So, I mean, my brother and I, we were 4 years difference. That's also actually his numerology life number. It was number 4. So he was born when I was age 4, and he died when I was 34. So, and he was age 30. But basically, you know, we ended up getting a lot of knowledge. Like it's, you know how they say, you know, as you become more enlightened, so to speak, it's not a, you know, a soothing or happy experience. It's what the heck is going on in this world. It's absolutely, it's incredible. But you also get that lonely feeling. And that's exactly what Jeremy and I went through. So at age 16, I'll admit that I did attempt to commit suicide. I mean, this is somewhat public knowledge. I attempted to jump in front of a car, pulled out at the last second. And I can say from what I experienced with my brother, I'm glad that I didn't go through with it. Feeling the pain that I have now, it's unimaginable. And I would have never, ever, ever wished that on my brother. So I'm glad that I stuck around because he probably would have done it sooner. I feel like just because he went into severe depression as well. And ultimately for him, it was he ended up shooting himself. One shot. And I ended up calling Katie and Robin. Actually, I think I went straight to FaceTime.
You did.
I didn't even call. I couldn't even. I had trouble speaking at the time. My coworkers drove me down there. They even drove my car down there to the house. And you know, I lost a half sister prior to this years ago. So originally I had a half sister. She died at age 23. And now I lost my brother, making me officially an only child. And I just remember when I was being driven to the house, I remember thinking to myself, my parents are about to do the hardest thing they've ever done, ever. And that's bury their child. And I wanted to find any way possible to alleviate that. I knew that I had to self-regulate and have to be ready to help with when I get to the house. And, you know, to tell my parents, you know, to get them to go, I ended up being the police contact in this case while they were on site. And trying to get, they were trying to get me to, hey, get your parents. They shouldn't stay here. They should get a hotel, get out of the house. And so I'm literally talking because they weren't going to listen to the police on that. And I had to get my parents out of the house. Walking upstairs and seeing a blood trail down the hall smeared on his door. Yeah.
That's rough.
That was hard to see. And then, we had the property taken out. I had the cleaners show up after my parents left, and I took care of all that. They had to renovate the room. And when I remember the day that I came back, which was the next day, July 8th, I walked into the room, his room. They had to cut out part of the hallway because it part of the scene went out because of people running in and out. And I walked into the room and saw they had knocked down the walls. They had taken down the ceiling, the flooring. They removed all his furniture. They took down his closet door. And the only thing that was left was the stuff that was in his closet. It felt like they erased him from history. 5 days later, they brought the property that they could recover back, that they wasn't contaminated. And my mother ended up picking up this book. Out of everything, I wanted the diaries. I told the cleaners, find the diaries. I don't care what condition they're in. It has his research in it. And we didn't find a suicide note until we found out it was in this book. In fact, where this pen is exactly how he had it marked. And it's marked in that same spot. But even going back into this book, on January 10th, he had literally put the beginning of the end of suffering. That was January 10th. And then once we got to the big thing about the path to communication is the last thing he said to me, and it haunts me. The last thing he says here is, John, we'll be in touch, I promise. And we had a saying for my brother and I. If we say, I promise, we are going to follow through on that promise. And if we have to break the promise, it's God. It has to be for a good reason. And that day I made a promise to him that I was going to work to keep his name alive, his work alive, and work to solve the paranormal. I made a promise without even knowing that he had made a promise to me until 5 days later. And that's the basic. I'll tell you, when this happened, I was awake for 48 hours straight. I didn't even know I was awake for 48 hours straight. I had downed energy drinks. I originally had lost 40 pounds and I gained it back within about a week and a half. I was originally on a diet. Then I gained it back just from that. The energy drinks, and then it happened on a Wednesday. On Friday, on Friday, I remember I kept on saying to someone, referring to the day as Wednesday. And it was Friday, and I kept on saying Wednesday. Oh yeah, I can't, and I don't remember why I kept on referring to the day as Wednesday, or why I kept on bringing up Wednesday. But then somebody said, John, it's Friday. John, it's Friday. And I go, no, it's not. And they go, yes, it is. I'm like, oh crap, I've got to sleep. And then after that, my body finally decided, was like, yeah, you've been awake for 48 hours. Good night. Yeah. And even after that 48 hours, it wasn't much sleep. It was a couple hours at most.
Right. Well, and the two of you telling your stories, first, thank you for opening up and sharing that. And, I'm kind of keeping an eye on the comments, and it looks like a lot of people have similar stories. I've seen a couple people say that they've lost brothers, they've lost loved ones. I saw a comment that one of their loved ones committed suicide as well. And this is one of the things and one of the reasons I feel so honored to be a part of this project is because whether you two realize it or not, you're going to reach people that probably feel alone and feel like they're the only person that's ever had to deal with this. So you're showing that there are people out there who understand, there are people out there who have gone through the same situations. And in that, you guys can kind of almost come together and start a process of healing.
I had said to John shortly after this had happened that this is a club that you never want to welcome a new member.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all lost a lot of people, and after even Jeremy's passing, I had gone to get a tattoo of the semicolon, and 2 days after, when I got back the next day, I had learned of a suicide within our school community. And for me, it was just one more piece of that, like, I have to welcome another member. You know, and whether it's a sudden death, it's a suicide, it's an accident, when you lose a sibling, there's a different feeling. You know, I've lost a lot of friends, but I've never lost someone that close that I watched grow up and, you know, be this 8-year-old kid and this young man into this incredible uncle and this incredible soul. And, you know, to just then, even now, to see pictures of his friends with their children and them moving forward and getting married. And it's like, you're always joyful and you're always so happy, but there's always that little piece in the back of your mind. And again, I'm grateful for the people that this is hitting and this is reaching. And I wish it didn't have to happen.
Right.
That's the hard thing.
But even with that, you know, with the people that it's reaching already, and it hasn't even been released yet, you know, and there's been little clips here and there throughout social media, but no one's really seen what you guys have been working on. Right. And I'm excited because you guys put together 2 different clips for us to show tonight. One of it kind of being a preview of the release, and one being an experiment between Katie and I that I honestly don't remember. I had this conversation with John. Yeah. And it's crazy to me because I even have an experience that I've never told anybody. And I shared that with you too, that, you know, you both have lost a sibling. I also have a sibling who attempted suicide. And thankfully, you know, his gun jammed. And it's between the 3 of us, there's so many different avenues of loss and what could have been, what could have happened. Thank God this didn't. And oh my gosh, that did. And it is an emotional roller coaster. And I mean, just watching the 2 of you and all of our experiences, and it's crazy. And, you know, with that, before we move on to kind of our next topic, is I do want to show that release. If you guys are okay with it, I would love to play, you know, the clip of Path to Communication. So everybody, I think you're kind of getting a little exclusive look. So here it is, guys. I hope you like it. Oh my gosh, I get chills every time I watch it. And especially, you know, you guys, when I mentioned that there was filming going on, and I caught this moment of Katie, and I know you can't talk too much about it, but the emotion on your face, it was pure, it was raw, it was in the moment. Yeah. And without giving away what happened or how it happened, can you just kind of, why do you think that you had that reaction in that moment? It might be hard to explain, but I mean, it's just the emotion on your face is just so raw.
I've heard spirit voices. You think you remember certain things, and you know a feeling. And for me, hearing what we caught, seeing what we caught, it definitely took me back. It took me a moment. It almost like this time warp of, did I really hear that? is that what I think it was? Oh my God, is that really that voice? No, it could be something else. Do I really want it to be? You start to just project things. You know, it's like when you see a shadow figure. Did I really see her? Or did somebody walk by? Like you want so badly to connect with anyone that is passed. But also for me, again, it's, oh, is it really that person? Could it really be what I've been begging? Like there's so many times that I'm like, God, I just wish I had one more conversation. I wish I had one more, you know, sound or voice. Like you know, with my aunt, you know, I thought that was her voice. I was almost positive it was her voice, but until my mother looked at me and said, that's my sister. And, you know, John heard it. He heard my mother's reaction. I had called her shortly after, you know, we had collected that EVP a couple of months ago or about a year ago now. And I wanted it so badly to be, but I wasn't sure. But her confirmation nailed it. So with, you know, the moment that you caught it, I wanted it to be real. I really, really, really wanted to make sure that that's truly what it was. And I mean, we're talking 10 seconds it took me to go through all of that, to go, is it, was it? Yes, no, it has to be. Oh my God, it is. And I'm grateful you caught it. It's always a little embarrassing and a little painful to see yourself that close on TV and in a camera. But I feel like, again, it's important for people to see raw emotion, to see like, yeah, you can gasp and go, oh, wow, was that? But, you know, you can't fake real. You can't fake that raw emotion. You can't fake that moment. And, you know, again, I'm grateful you were in my face with the camera. But also it's hard. It's definitely a hard thing to see yourself and be like, I'm that vulnerable in that moment. And this is, again, why I say to people, have a great team behind you. You know, I am eternally grateful for you guys and for all of the people that I work with, because we have each other spiritually. We have each other emotionally. I knew that if in that moment I broke down more than I did, even though it was raw, I knew I was safe. And I feel like that is the hardest thing for people to understand in the paranormal. Is it's fun. It's great to catch things, but you have to make sure that the people around you keep you spiritually safe as well as physically safe. And again, I'm grateful that it was caught, and I'm grateful to have you guys next to me for that.
I will say, I think that is the first investigation, because I'm not a crier. You guys know that.
You lost it.
I am not a crier. And I was like, oh, I was ugly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yep, I couldn't look at you for that reason. I know she's doing it. I could see this. And I was like,
oh yeah, that's why I hide behind a camera. I'm like, you guys can't see me. But it is. And, you know, everybody thinks that the paranormal is this, you go in and there's demons and there's things thrown across the room and jumping and scaring and all this scare factor. But there really is a beautiful side to paranormal that not everybody explores. And I think that whole, we'll say, market, because I really don't know a better way for it, is missing. And you guys are hitting it, and you're hitting it hard, and it's fantastic. And
if you want a jump scare, go watch a horror movie. If you want real life investigation, information, solving something that has maybe always been a question for you, then find the right people and do it.
And justification. Yeah. And I have to say that word, it's one of my favorite words in this field, but justification, because the next clip that we have, you guys are going to have to explain it a little bit more than I remember doing it, but I don't remember. I remember setting up and kind of cleaning up. Other than that, I don't really remember much that happened.
And I'll say I was the same way until John had showed me some of the footage in getting this together, and then even just in some editing meetings. Because again, you're in your own head, you know, you're blindfolded, you have headphones on, you're just asking questions. You're just trying to listen for responses. And it wasn't until it was pieced together that I realized how much we were connecting with whatever was there. And it was almost like two people, you know, we were sitting across from each other across the room, but it also felt like two people were sitting next to us, in front of us, on us, having this conversation through us. And, you know, I kind of took the lead in asking the questions just so that we had something outside. And I actually said to John that I would love to like get the recordings of the actual SB7 and the necrophonic and everything that we were using, because I feel like it's important, again, for that justification of we're not just throwing out words. It wasn't like, okay, you memorize these 10 things and I'm going to memorize these 10 things and we're just going to put it together and make it look amazing. Like we've only done this a handful of times, and each time it just gets better and better and better. And I, again, think the spirits know that. I feel like, again, that connection with the people that you're working with you and I, with John and I, that the more you spiritually connect with people, the better results you're going to have. And the nice thing with experiments are you can duplicate them and triplicate them. And, you know, it's not a one and done where, you know, sometimes people do something and just go, well, that worked, or it didn't work and I'm never doing it again. It might not work 1,000 times and work once. The once was worth it.
Right. And we're going to show another clip, but for people who don't really know, what we were doing is we were at this location and we were doing Estes, which is where both of us were sitting in an area. I had on headphones and a blindfold, and I had necrophonic going through my phone. Katie, I think you had the SBox 7.
I think I had the necrophonic as well. And
Did you?
Okay. I had it through a speaker that I had hooked up to earbuds, and then I had headphones over it so that I had double protection. Yeah,
so I had my AirPods, and then I had my but then in the experiment, we also put our phones and devices on airplane mode so that it doesn't pick up anything. So in this clip, this is what we're doing. We're doing this Estes experiment, and we are far enough apart that we can't hear each other, but we're using 2 different phones, 2 different sets of everything. So if you guys want to go ahead and check this clip out.
The whole right side of my body is pins and needles. I can hear a heartbeat. Listen. I have to do it.
Go. Go.
Come up.
That's crazy. That is so crazy. I don't know. Like, just watching some of this stuff, you know, in the moment, we know what we're getting, we know what we're catching, but then seeing it back when you're kind of out of your investigation mode, it's a completely different world.
Yeah.
But with that, that's also part of Path to Communication. So let's talk about release date, where people can find this. I'm seeing a lot of comments of people excited to see it and they can't wait. So let's talk about when they're going to be able to access it, how they can access it, where to go, all that fun stuff.
So this is going to be, as of now, Patreon exclusive. And basically, if you type in www.patreon, that's patreon.com/UINI Research, that'll bring you right to our specific page. It's going to release August 12th this year on at 5 p.m. Eastern. And now the thing is Patreon is changing some things up where we are going to, there's the membership portion of it, which the $1 and $3 tier will allow access to that first episode. And then the $3 tier goes, and that's $3 per month, goes to the other episodes aside from the other benefits that come with it. But then Patreon is also going to be adding where you can actually purchase the episodes. You don't have to be a member. You can purchase the episode at a specific price and go from there. So it's actually going to be, and we're going to have, this is a multi-episode series. Season 1, we're aiming for 4 episodes, and then we want to increase that in the next season going forward. We're already looking towards season 2, but Patreon is going to be the place to look.
Great. So for anybody looking for it, we did drop the link in the chat, so you can check it out, copy paste it into your browser, and you'll be able to find it that way. And then also, I heard that there's going to be an upcoming kind of crowdfunding campaign. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So we want to again, we want to take uh, this series to new levels. We want to increase the equipment. We also want to work on doing more like with some reenactments, different locations, and part of this series too with Patreon. What we're doing is that we have a donation program to go with it. Where every 6 months, our Patreon voters are deciding where some of our funds that we raise, aside from it going to all our other projects, we'll donate a small portion to specific non-for-profits. Every 6 months, part of that, aside from the other nonprofits, we also donate a small portion to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We're also going to be adding one in regards to drunk driving as well, drunk driving prevention, such. So the crowdfunding is focused on the increase in quality and the continuation of that. We're going to aim to continue doing the path of communication regardless, but we want it to continue to be something special. We want it to get further out there, and that's part of this crowdfunding campaign. And in addition to that, with everything that our team does, we like to also, again, continue to do donations and such. And with a series like this that's meant to help people, for us, we look at it as the series may help people, like people who are viewing it and such. They may determine, like as Katie said, put down that can of beer. Somebody contemplating suicide may put down the gun. But we also want to donate to services and stuff that's out there as well to help others. So we're even considering other votes within the Patreon page of other nonprofits, of other people who may have gone through things, and parts of the funding may go to that's gained as we continue throughout this progress. So a lot of this is about helping people, as well as continuing to show the paranormal in a very different light.
Yeah. No, and I think it's fantastic because, a lot of people do go out there and they, like we've talked about before, they film the paranormal, they get a knock, they get a bang, and that's the extent of it. But the fact that you guys are taking real life scenarios, real life situations, tragedy, crime, all of that, you're putting it with paranormal. I don't want to say entertaining because it comes out wrong, but it's helping people. It's helping heal people that you've never met. It's letting people know that they're not alone. And you're doing these organizations. I mean, it's just what you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. And I mean, just being your friend, I'm honored, and I love watching what you guys are doing because you really, truly are making a difference in so many different ways.
And it's just like, for me, just like we grieve in different ways, we want to heal in different ways. And I feel like letting people know that, yes, you can be serious. And yes, these are serious topics. I will never, think anything different. It changed my life. It's changed even how I do things. Even just going to dinner with friends and family, it's, you're always thinking in the back of your head, well, what about this? For me, I use this story all the time. You are out to dinner, you have a few drinks, you run a red light, you run a stop sign. That's a very different than maybe police stop than if you had just run it and didn't have any alcohol in your system. So it's educating people and showing, like, listen, I've moved forward. I don't ever say you move on. It doesn't get better. You just learn a different way of life. You learn how to grieve differently. You learn how to heal differently. You learn how to communicate differently. One thing that I always say to people is, when I remember shortly after, people would say, "Oh, how are you doing today?" My first reaction is, "Well, not great. Like, this all happened and blah, blah, blah." And it was like, people don't know. Like, people are just asking how your day is. So you have to, like, take that mindset of, like, yeah, I'm having a crap day, and yeah, my brother's dead, and this sucks, but it's like, I'm doing great. Like, and people don't know. I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and be like, how are you? Oh, I probably shouldn't ask that. Oh, and it's like, no, it's okay. Like, you can ask me how I'm doing. But I want people to start that conversation. If there's somebody out there that has never had this conversation and never once thought, I can talk to anyone, or had that family interaction of, like, we don't speak about it. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to pretend like it didn't happen and he's not here. If somebody's going through that, I want them to be able to say, you know what, this series is going to help. Or, you know, maybe it starts, maybe instead of having a conversation with a sibling or a family member, you can just go, hey, you know what? I watched this. Tell me what you think of it.
Right.
And maybe that starts a whole other conversation.
Right.
So,
and go ahead, John. Sorry.
I mean, when you really think about it, the title to the series, The Path to Communication, has more than one meaning. You know, it's not just reference to talking to our brothers or other deceased family members, but it opens up communication. And that's the big highlight there is that path to, because, you know, I've come across many people that have experienced things, and some of them, even like Katie, and it had nothing to do with death, so to speak, but it was actually paranormal related of how we ended up meeting. There's that path to leading to communication. And just on an interesting note, I forgot to mention this, is that where the funeral occurred, where the wake occurred, it so happened to be in the exact same funeral home, in the exact same room as Katie's brother. I didn't know this until after the fact, but that was just when she told me that. She even told me, she said that when she walked in, she saw the funeral home. She was like, please don't let it be that specific room. And it was.
Yeah. So my initial reaction to, again, being a support system was, okay, you have 10 seconds to deal with this and then get it out of your head and be there for your friend. So, but I was, the minute I remember giving him like a list of like, I don't know, 10 or 15 different funeral homes. And when you told me what it was, I was like, oh, please don't let it be this one. Please, please, for the love of God. Like, I can't do this. And it took me a couple minutes of sitting in my car and, again, kind of reliving certain things of like, okay, I got to put my big girl panties on and I got to do this. Yeah. And this was actually the first time that my son had been at that funeral home. Because, I mean, he was a year and a half. I wasn't bringing him to that funeral.
Right.
But so for me, it was, I not only had to deal with that, but then also have my son being like, Mom, are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, you got to give me a minute, kid. Like, give me a second. And then I explained to him what had happened. And I explained how the room was laid out and everything. And he was like, oh, okay. He's like, I can see, wow, this can be a little painful. And again, it was a great support of having people there. And, you know, there's laughs and there's tears and, you know, we had some funny stuff that had happened and, you know, we kind of went on this adventure afterwards. And it was a great healing moment through all this tragedy and all this pain. And I don't ever want to welcome another member into this club, but if I can be some type of support for anyone, I'm happy to.
And unfortunately, we have come to the end of the time for the show. However, before we go, I want to let everyone know that if there is somebody going through a situation similar to any of ours, please reach out to us. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikToks, we have all of that. Even if you just want someone just to listen while you vent, while you cry, any of it, reach out to us because we are here for you and you're never alone. With that, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. I love you both so much, and I can't wait to see you guys. Everyone else, have a good night, and I will see you next week.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.